Imagine waking up as a 20-year-old and asking yourself, what is a man? What is family? And what is community? This is a growing reality for a larger and larger number of young men. As an older guy, I feel a need to extend a level of grace to younger men. Younger men are growing up in society now where they're needed less than ever, where they're told they're bad more than ever, and where they're restricted in their behavior more than ever before in human society. So if you're a young guy growing up in a society where you're basically told that you're inherently bad, and at the same time, if you're going to be a man, you got to pay money, you got to be rich, and how do you cope with that? How do you balance the idea out that you're supposed to be a person that's a provider, but at the same time, your machismo or masculinity or whatever is inherently bad? Guys like us that are a little bit older, we had guardrails, we had church, we had community, we had, schools that were parts of the community. We had guardrails. We even had wholesome television that ended broadcast with, and the moral of the story is. I think even G.I. Joe did that. So you have a whole generation or several generations of young men that didn't get any of that. They're growing up in a home without two parents. They didn't go to church. Their schools are not a far cry from what they were when we were going there younger. And they're trying to make sense of all of this. So you see the questions, what am I as a man? What is a family? How do I create a family when I've never seen one? What does community look like? And young guys looking for answers, they're going to naturally look to the internet, because that's where the internet comes in especially for a generation of young guys who basically are not really getting the influence from a church group, a social group in the community, or even, having teachers as mentors. Their mentors are now internet personalities. And when that happens, you see these kind of personalities almost become deities. They become people that are substitutes for when you're a young guy in 1980s and you're going to church, your deity is church. Or even if you're not that much of a church guy, your identity revolves around your place in your community, or your goals for where you're going to take yourself and maybe the woman that you're thinking about getting together with and marrying. And so we have a different level of grounding in our generations because we had a chance to see something. And at least if marriage or things of the nature didn't work for us, our alternative is to move away from that. We have generations now that never had that option. The only option is, how do I make sense of the fact that I'm not wanted, I can't get a girlfriend, I gotta be a millionaire for a woman to want me, and everyone around me is telling me that as a man, I'm inherently bad. This makes, it just makes a young group of men very susceptible to, internet influencers. And I'm not saying that Andrew Tate is a good guy or a bad guy. That's not my point here, because I think this is the really difficult part about humanity, is that maybe some of his actions are just not to be applauded, but some of the things that he said are spot on. And so as a young guy, you see someone who looks like he's got it figured out, and your thing is, I don't want to take his learning points and apply them to myself. I want to become him. And we see this as almost as if the stories that you were learning in church, I want to be more like Joseph, or be more like King David. The kids that are not getting that, they want to be more like internet personalities. And you can't really blame them for it, because who else is there? There's no one else there for these young men. So that leads me to the question that is basically the reason why this space was created. What is marriage for? Now, we've heard so many things about don't get married, and this bad will happen if you get married. But what we haven't talked about is, what is the substitute for that purpose that marriage gives young men? Well, what is the substitute? How do you replace, I'm going to go to work so that my children can eat and so that my wife can raise my children, to go make money and get muscles and have sex with a lot of women? I mean, you can do that, but it's not going to be a life purpose, because you're going to get tired of that. You're not going to get tired of seeing your kids grow. You're not going to get tired of seeing your kids mature into well-functioning, people that are going to contribute to society, because that's what men used to be valued for. That's what men used to do. And now that, at least in Western society, you're kind of taking that out of the equation for a large number of men. If you're a young man and you're looking around, you're saying, well, I don't have a purpose now. And that's where I think this conversation has to kind of evolve into don't get married, don't get married, don't get married, because money, muscles, chicks, that is not going to be a purpose like family is. It's not a substitute. And so I just want to end this video by saying to young men, I offer you grace, because you are looking for the answers in the middle of a hurricane, on a boat that has leaks in it and people throwing rocks at you. No one is telling young men the right way, because everyone is trying to maybe pick $1 off of you, or they have an agenda for you, and no one is telling you the holistic way to find what men have found for centuries in life purpose. If you're an older guy, have a little bit of grace for these younger guys, because younger guys, they didn't have the benefit of church and society and community. They're trying to figure this thing out on their own. And for you younger guys, just seek out older guys that have slowly built up themselves into the men that they are, and ask them for tips. They can't give you complete advice because they grew up in a time different from you. But to older guys, give these younger guys grace,